everybody, and welcome back. So if I look like a teeny bit tanner, maybe, I don't know. I don't know really how much I tanned. Yes, I am back from my vacation. So in case you missed it, from February 12th to February 23rd, 24th-ish, I was way out west. I was in Texas, specifically West Texas, and then I was also in Arizona, just outside of Tucson in the Oro Valley. I had so much fun. I was literally tagging everything with #MadsWesternAdventure. It was wonderful. You're all gonna hate me, for those of you who are on the East Coast. It was between 70 and 80 degrees and sunny for every single day I was there. I did tons of hiking in different canyons and mountains, and I got to see my best friend in the whole wide world. He's my human, that's what I call him. He got me the cutest Valentine's Day gift. So this is the Nymeria direwolf plush from Game of Thrones, because we're both huge Game of Thrones nerds. And then I was in Arizona visiting my grandparents and just had a lovely time. And of course, while I was on this vacation, either having some downtime or sitting in airports, I did some reading. First, I read an arc of Shadow Scale by Rachel Hartman. This book is coming out this month. It is the long-awaited sequel to Serafina, which was one of my favorite books I read in 2013. I did put a review on Goodreads, a full written one, and it is no spoilers. And if you haven't read the first book, this duology is phenomenal. It does things with dragons that are super unique, and the writing is phenomenal. The world building is really neat. It's a perfect blend of the familiar with the fantastical, and this was a wonderful book. I rated it a 4 out of 5 stars. My only gripes with it were some things that happened in the ending, but I won't say anything more because spoilers. Next, I read Stolen Songbird by Danielle L. Jensen. I rated this book a 3 out of 5 stars. I liked some of the things that were done with trolls. I thought it was actually really quite clever. It's a really melodramatic book. It's more a fantastical romance than it is kind of a straight fantasy novel. And so while, it was good, not 100% my cup of tea, some of it was quite ridiculous, but there were elements of it that were good. So it got a 3 out of 5. Next, I read Clash of Eagles by Alan Smale. As you can see, there's no cover because it is another uncorrected proof, another arc from NetGalley, which I read for review. I rated this book a 4 out of 5 stars, and I'm not gonna lie, it took me over halfway through this novel to even kind of decide I was gonna do that. If I had based my review and my rating on just the first half, this probably would have gotten a 2 or a 3 out of 5. Because I started this book and I kept turning to my friend saying, I think I know exactly how this is going to end. It's basically Dances with Wolves with the Roman Legion. Turns out I was partially right, but predominantly wrong. I didn't realize this was going to be setting up a series, so I finished it and I went, oh, there's still a lot more that needs to get, done. But if you haven't guessed, this is a alternate history novel with the idea that the Roman Empire never fell, and it's now the 1200s, and they have now discovered America, and they're trying to conquer America. So there's some really, really neat alternative history stuff that happens. Our main character is really very good, and my only complaint was that the first half is really slow and really reminiscent of things like Dances with Wolves, and so I was getting really frustrated with it, but it did get so much better, and there's some great adult and children relationships, which are something I don't see enough of, really. The idea of kind of parent-child relationships, but a young child and sort of adoptive child in a way. And there's some amazing things that go on in this book, so I recommend checking it out when it releases. If you like historical fiction, Clash of Eagles is going to be a really good choice for you. I finally read The Queen of the Tearling by Erica Johansson. This is a first book in a fantasy series that she's writing, and I remember when this book came out, there was so much hype surrounding it. One was an article that Miss Johansson wrote entitled Why We Need Ugly Heroines, and I thought it was a really fascinating article, and she talked about some of the things that happened in her writing and trying to get this novel published involving her heroine, and also that Emma Watson, who we all know is Hermione Granger, the fabulous Emma Watson, raved about this book. She loved it, and it's already going to be made into a movie, and she is set to be the star. Which I find a little weird when you told me that this is supposed to be an ugly heroine and you have Emma Watson, who's just stunning. This is a high fantasy novel involving an area of land known as the Tearling. It's broken off from all the other continents, and it's sort of reverted back to a medieval time, but there is magic, and it is amazing stuff, guys. If you haven't read this, it's amazing. Also, this book. I mean, this is stunning. It's even got a ribbon bookmark. They make it look like an old book. We all know I'm suckers for that. This book was phenomenal. I rated it a 5 out of 5 stars. It is... I'm so ready for the sequel. I can't even explain. So while I was in Texas, my friend said basically that he had a small surprise for me and was like, we're gonna go to Barnes & Noble, which I told him, that's really, really dangerous. You've never been in a Barnes & Noble with me, but okay. But I was kind of excited because there was a book I really did want to get, and I found it, and I read it, and that is How to Be a Heroine, or What I've Learned from Reading Too Much by Samantha Ellis. This is a memoir about Miss Ellis's journeys through some of her favorite female protagonists, some of her favorite heroines, and sort of the lessons that she took from them or should have been taking from them. And Miss Ellis wrote this because she was having a conversation with her friend and realized she was always trying to be Kathy Earnshaw when maybe she should have been trying to be Jane Eyre. It was a really fun and fascinating book. I rated it 5 out of 5 stars because it's good for people like me who read all these books that are referenced, and so I understand all the slants and I understand all of the kind of literary dialogue that goes on in here, and then also you get some of her personal experiences. It's a fun book. If you're a big reader, especially a reader of female books with like female protagonists, a lot of classic lit. If you see some of the ones up here, you've got like Anne of Green Gables, Jane Eyre, Franny Glass, Lizzie Bennet, Scarlett O'Hara, Lucy Honeychurch. I mean, if you've read these books, this is a fun book to pick up, and it's not real long. This book really doesn't have a cover, so I guess I'll just have to insert it. I also read an arc of A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. Oh my god, guys. Oh my god. I think I figured I was gonna like this book when I actually saw a snippet of a review from somebody on Goodreads that said something like, this character will like stir your loins or something, and I was like, what? Guys, this book is sexy. Like, I can't even explain how sexy this book is. I rated this book a 5 out of 5, and I will be buying it when it comes out in print, and guys, you need to read this. I don't often read books involving fairies. I think like a lot of people who say they don't really read fairy books just kind of irritate me. The fairies are never all that interesting, or, you know, they're really tough to do. They're either too cute or they're just not interesting. These guys are fascinating, and as only Sarah J. Maas can do, her world building is so on point, and her characters are all really interesting and complex. She does so well in telling a self-contained story, but then in also leaving stuff open for sequels. So, oh god, I just need the next book. I need the next book. Again, another book without a cover to put in here. I'm so sorry, I read all these arcs because they were all on my Kindle, and I was like, ooh, time to do some reading. I read A Desperate Fortune by Susanna Kersley, who I think a lot of people are becoming a little more aware of thanks to Outlander, because she has a very phenomenal book called The Winter Sea, which also involves Scotland and past and present together. Anyway, this is her upcoming release, and it involves actually not so much in Scotland. The Scots and the Jacobites are referenced, and she loves to use that era of history. This involves a lot of France, which was kind of interesting for me. It's a new place, really, for her books that I've read. I rated this book a 5 out of 5 stars. Now, I really love Susanna Kersley, but I've only ever rated one other book of hers 5 out of 5 stars, and that was The Winter Sea. All of her others I rated a 4 or a 3, because for me, they were just missing something that The Winter Sea had, and for me, it was this compulsion to want to know the ending for both stories that were being told, because she always has one story that's being told in the past and one that's like telling it in the present, oftentimes paralleling it. And for the other books of hers I read, there was always like one story I was more interested in than the other, and that's something that happens when you're telling multiple perspectives. Desperate Fortune was back to that time where I needed to know what happened to both storylines, and I think this is probably my favorite character that she's made in the present / modern day, and oof, it was so good, guys. 5 out of 5 stars. Loved it. I finally read A Cold Legacy by Megan Shepherd, the third and final book in the Madman's Daughter trilogy. This book, like the others, is a play upon classic Gothic fiction, this time dealing with the story of Frankenstein or the modern Prometheus by Mary Shelley. I rated this book a 4 out of 5 stars because, okay, I have rated every book in this series 4 out of 5 stars because I'm very torn over them. The concept is a great concept. The writing and the Gothic atmosphere is always on point in these books. My issue is with the main character of Juliet. Her character never really develops, even all throughout the series. And I'm sure a lot of people will disagree with me, but she always has the exact same inner conflict through each book. It never really goes anywhere, and that frustrates me a lot. And there's some romantic intrigue that drives me a little bonkers. Whatever the case, it's still a 4 out of 5 stars, and I think it's a phenomenal trilogy. It's very unique in what it does. I read Night of Cake and Puppets by Lady Taylor. This is just a novella focusing on the World of Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy, and focuses on the best friend Susanna and her boyfriend Mick and how they meet, and it was super cute. I rated it a 5 out of 5 stars because it had me smiling and in a good mood the whole time I was reading it. It's really quick too. If you read this trilogy, you need this because you're gonna love it. The last thing that I read on my vacation was that I listened to an audiobook called Winter is Coming, Symbols and Hidden Meanings in a Game of Thrones by Valerie Estelle Frankel. It was a daily deal from Audible, and I was like, ooh, that could be really interesting. I rated it a 4 out of 5 stars because parts of it really were fascinating and great to listen to, because so much of Game of Thrones is about symbols and imagery, and there's a lot of history, and it gives you all that back information that's really fascinating. But other parts of it, you know, I knew, so I wasn't as interested in it. But 4 out of 5 stars, it was good to listen to when I was like in the airport and it wasn't that long. And just yesterday, I finally finished Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson, the second book in his Stormlight Archive series. Of course, 5 out of 5 stars. It was brilliant. When I was getting near the end, I was like, I can't believe I'm near the end. Why am I near the end? And I'm just in love with, I mean, Brandon Sanderson, he could write the effing phone book and I'd probably love it. If you guys have not read this series yet, I highly recommend it, but with a caveat that it is very long and it is very dense. So kind of go in prepared. The audiobooks are really phenomenal, so I do recommend those as well, but if you are into high and epic fantasy, right here. Hey, look, I'm done with all the reading, but I'm still recording. Why is that? Because I have some books to show you. So I got some books when I was on my vacation. I hadn't planned on it, but I did. Obviously, I got How to Be a Heroine, or what I've learned from reading too much, so we know that already, so we'll skip that. When I was staying with my grandparents, their library actually had books for sale, and they were $1 or $2, and I was like, I doubt they'll have anything I want. I was wrong. I was able to pick up A Great and Terrible Beauty and Rebel Angels in hardback for a grand total of $2. I mean, how do you say no to that? $2. I had to. I wish they'd had the third book. They didn't. So I think I'll just sit with these as incomplete until I come across the third one in hardback to go with it. But these are a phenomenal paranormal historical fiction series by Libba Bray, and oh, so good. I love them. I listened to them from my local library and was just in love with this series. And finally, I came home to a package from Palgrave Macmillan, which was a giveaway I'd won on Goodreads, and it is an arc of Beneath the Surface by John Hargrove. If any of you saw the documentary Blackfish, which was on SeaWorld and Killer Whales, John Hargrove featured prominently in that, and this is his book talking about his time working for SeaWorld and working with killer whales, which are like my favorite animal, and various other things, and so I'm really excited to read it. It doesn't look very long, it's got fairly large print, and I'm hoping this is good. But that is it for me today, you guys, and so until next time, cheers.